Okay, so let's start. So yesterday we saw reactive forms, and mostly when we compare which is used mostly in our development. So most of the time reactive forms have the highest priority because it is more clear, you would say. Template needs some IDs or some directives, but here you can just write the ID inside that form group and it will be taken care. And plus validation is quite easy in terms of, you can say, more modularized or more component based. So you just have to write something like this to validate. So we have more control over the particular field of what you want to do, and this is how you can validate it. And today we will see how to call APIs. So today's agenda is calling API using Angular. Okay, so we are going to do this. So definitely we already have APIs, so we can run that from backend service as well. So I'm going to run this Eclipse first of all. Okay. Okay, fine. We will use that later. For now, we have to focus on Angular code. So what we're going to do, we already know what is API, right? So I don't have to explain what is API. So there are certain questions which you should know, like what is API, then how API works, and its internal flow. So that means we are talking about Spring Boot working indirectly. So you should know how it works. We already covered that. So now at front end side, what we will do? So first of all, we will create a service. Okay. Why we create service? Because from here we will trigger API. Trigger API by uh, mm, calling HTTP client. Okay, so we'll see what is that. We have to like it's like a library, so we have to use that library in your service. Then and okay, that's what we have to do. And regular stuffs, we have to create a component. From component, this service gets called. So how this whole flow looks like? Let me give you an idea. So we'll start with component, and that's for sure. Component is there. Once component is done, then we will see it goes to service. Once it's done, then we will see HTTP module. Okay, that will take care of our request, which goes to the backend. Okay, and at the end, we will meet the big server. Okay, on. Okay, so the first three things they belongs to front end side, and finally they meet this server guy. And server is nothing but our Spring Boot application which we have already written. So we are going to use one of the API which we already used. So it's going to be SB app. In short, I'm writing SB app. That is Spring Boot app. Okay, so arrow goes from component to service, service to module, and then this module calls server, the application. This is what we are going to achieve. Okay, so we don't have component, we don't have service, and definitely HTTP module is also missing. So this is actually a service. We are not going to create this our own. We will create a service and we will use this module inside the service. Okay, so even before that, we have to make sure that we are using or integrating or importing this library in our module file. That's the very first step. So we'll go back to the service already running. Localhost 4200. Typo. Okay, that's the reactive form. We know this thing. Okay. So we have to first of all import that library. I'm talking about that HTTP uh, client module. So that's a module. So I'll write here HTTP client module. Sometimes it won't come up because it is present in uh, one below folder. I'll tell you what does it mean. It's not directly present, so you have to go one by one, and then it will find out by the Angular. So you have to write import HTTP capital HTTP client module, then let's say from single quotes dot slash, oh sorry, not actually Angular library, so say at Angular common and slash HTTP, and yeah, it's fixed now. So this is the line which you have to write to import HTTP client module. Okay, it is working fine, no error. Next step, we have to create one component for sure. So let's start the service. So let's go inside. We already here src app, so we'll say src app, and we'll say ng generate component, and what will say okay, that's our backend API, and this fetches all employees. Okay, get employee, get mapping, and it has a emp. So I'll say get, I'll say all emp. Okay, that's my component name, all emp. So it will generate again 4 files and update the module file. So definitely I needed this. So I'll make sure that you know every single file, why we have this file, what's the purpose. Okay, so we wrote this command. So as a result, we get this structure. Okay, there it is. And in component file, sorry, module file, we should have one entry. There it is. All component and further. Okay. So this is our project picture. This is app.module.ts. Okay, so we have this file ready. Great. Let's create third image where we will also make sure that we are tracking one library, that HTTP client module. And for that I will, because that's it, we don't need to worry about other libraries. This will be fine. We just needed HTTP, otherwise we have all the other library with us. Let's give it okay. There it is, file saved. Okay, now why we need this HTTP client module and this. So our application for this API call, we are using these two things, component and one library module. Okay, so we have these things ready. So our base is ready with the library and the component. It's again app.module.ts. Okay, fine. Now next thing, let's create a service. Okay, right now I'm not writing any code, but just to make sure that things are working, things should work fine in future. So I need to use this selector in app component. It goes, I'll come until here, and new component is all employee. Okay, so when we run this code, it should load this message, all emp works, and we know it will work, so that's fine. Now as I mentioned, we have to create one service which actually calls the main API, and that's our target. So we have seen how to create component, how to create module, and we have also seen how to create class. So likewise we are going to create service. So how to create service? Pretty straightforward. Same command, and then instead of saying component, we will say service. So we are talking about service. In one line, place where we write um, common code. Okay, common code or share code. So think about, we have multiple components and they need some service. It could be PDF generation, it could be API call, it could be some validations, or could be anything. So if any component needs something and we think that this requirement may be required by some other, or in future it will be required, so we can put that in service level. Okay, how to create service? So syntax is again similar. So it goes like same way: ng generate service and then service name. And obviously we have a shorthand for this, or we can write it ng generate service and then service name. And obviously we will pick the second one. It takes less effort to write. Okay, once you execute this command, it will give you two files. Okay, it will give us two files. One will be I can take this name, service name dot ts, obviously where we write our code, and next would be dot specs, which is for test cases, dot ts. Okay, so we will get these two files. So I'm putting it as a note. For services, Angular generates only two files. Okay, fine. So we have a picture what we're up to. Now let's generate the service for our application, which is for calling API. So let's go back here. This is my commands. Here it is not there. Delete. This is there. It is. Okay, and here we are inside src app. I'll create one more folder. Okay, so inside all employee, but service should be global. So I'll create one folder, src app and then services. So here on app, click on app, then click this icon. You can see there's a folder. So click and write services. Oh, service is fine. Service. Okay, and then we will go inside this service, cd service, and then I'll write ng generate service, and let's say what's the API again? EMP. So let's say EMP data. Okay, I'm going to call it employee data service and enter. And if it goes successfully, we should see only two files generation, and yep, there it is. So let's document this as well, that when you execute, this is how it looks. And to have this, we created a different service folder. Okay, and we can do one thing, why not? But okay, we are not going to enhance it, so it's fine. Otherwise, if I have to create this service for project level, so I'll create a service folder, and inside that, regarding it's going to be employee or admin or user or this service or that service, accordingly I'll create folders and then I'll create these services. But for now it's in open, that is okay. Otherwise I'll create that at one more level nesting. Okay, so we have our service ready, at least the file is ready. So how it looks like? Yeah, that's the question. It's not that similar to what class looks like. It's a bit different what a component looks like. Okay, so let's have a look. So if in the TS file, it's much smaller as compared to class, and it has one thing which says injectable. Okay, so that's one directive which is used to, which just clearly says that it is provided at root level. So we don't need to worry about that. We are not going to touch that part. But yeah, our service class is ready. Okay, now let's put a code. We are not going to write again anything in spec file, that remains as it is. Even you can delete it, it won't matter. Okay, so we have our class ready. Now from here we are going to trigger API. Okay, so let's write some code inside this file, and here we are going to use that HTTP client. Fine. So first of all, at the top we have this import line, right? So we have to import HTTP client, which helps us to connect backend to front end. So I'll say import brackets and I'll type HTTP client. There it is, imported. Okay, so it is coming from Angular common HTTP. Yes, that's the path. So we have an HTTP client ready. Now next question is, because we are going to use this to call API, so how to create its instance? So to do that, you Angular provides in a very simpler way. It says wherever your constructor is, just write private, create a reference HTTP. I mean, you can call it anything. I'm calling it HTTP. Then colon and give the type. That's it. Now this can be accessible within this service class, and you can use it the way you want. You don't have to create its instance. Constructor will take care of it, and it will work. That's it. Now what we just did, we have kind of, again I'm saying it's not absolutely correct, it just, I'll say kind of object creation of HTTP client. Okay, so you can connect it easily. Okay, so what just happened on at constructor level. Okay, this is done. Now we are going to write a method. I'll say employees function. It's going to function, call it anything, or let's say get all employees. It will clear more picture. Okay, get all employees. And here inside this method I'll just write one statement, this dot http. This http is same, this one, and then because we said that we have an object, so we can call one method. So here I'll say get. Why I'm writing get? Because the API is get mapping. If it was something else, so I'll say post. So you can see if I put a dot, delete, get, post, put, everything is here. So according to your API type, it is get mapping. So I have to call get function, and inside get function you have to give the URL which you have want to call from your service. So what's the endpoint? It's EMP. So before running that, let me run this backend code and see how we actually call the API. So that's application, right click, run as application. Okay, Spring Boot up running on 8080. So let me go back here. I'll say 8080 and slash EMP. And yeah, it's working. See, if I check, this is a response. Get request you can execute on browser. It will work. You cannot request post, put, or delete. Sometimes you can execute, but for get, it will work on browser. And I can see when I request this endpoint, I can see my response is coming. So what I can do, I can copy this URL. Yes, I'll copy this URL and paste it here, or I can create one variable. That will also good. So here at top level, I'll create one variable. Let's say URL. Let's say get API URL. It will be more clear to you, and equals double quotes, paste it, done. And I'll copy call this API URL here. Let's start and done. Okay, so our service class is ready. So localhost 8080 and then endpoint. Okay, now where to call this or how to call the API? It's done. Now how to call this get employee function? So for that we will use that earlier created function with it all employee. There it is. So that's the TS file. Here we will try to call that. Okay, so everything's fine, and here I'll create a constructor. We are not going to create any button or trigger or something that will trigger the API. I'll just call it when the page gets loaded, it will call the API right away. So I'm not going to add any function or any button that might increase the complexity. So idea is, as soon as the component is loaded by Angular, it will call this constructor. That's how constructor works. Here I will create instance of user or this employee data. Like we created an object of HTTP client inside employee data service. Likewise, we will create object of employee data service inside this component, all employee component. So steps are same. Here I'll say private, then let's say emp data, that's my variable name, of type emp data service, and done. So what we just did, we kind of created instance of emp data service. Why we need this? Because we have to call one function get all employee, which will trigger the API. Okay, clear? Here we are. So I'll say emp data dot get all employees. Fine. And now because it's a function, so this one, and then there's a special function which is known as subscribe. Get all employee data that get employees dot subscribe. And here we will write one this and response and we will console that console dot log. So whatever response comes from the service layer, it will be stored here. Okay, we're getting error on subscribe. What? Why? It's fine here. The service also fine. Client is here. Oh, I'm not returning actually. Return. Okay. So response. Response from API. So first of all, we will console that. We'll see whether it's coming or not. Then we will use it. Semicolon. Code format. Done. So I think we are done. Let's run this code and see is it working or not, or are we missing something more to run this execution. So it won't work. We still something is missing, but I want to show you how to fix that. Okay, so let's run the application. Ng serve. Okay, so we have called this on HTML page. All employee, no error, looks good. Going here, there it is. Reload, and it says all EMP works. We are printing on console, so let's see. Oh, we're getting error. Now check out the error. What it says. Let me call this. Copy this line and paste on paint image. This is one very common issue, but we are able to execute this. So let me do one thing before copying that. Let me put this. Front end wise, it's good, but there's one issue at backend side, so we have to fix that. So let me finish this code first. Five. So two important things we did here. First of all, importing one HTTP client. Next, calling this by get function. Okay, there we go. And this is a different thing. Okay, this is from the service file. Okay, great. Next, what we did in TS file, this piece of code. Let's see if it comes in this screen or not. Okay, let's move this. And here what we did, we have injected employee data service, which is right there. So let me give a same color, and then we are calling one function, get all employees. It's right here. Let's create a different color, green and gray. No, get employees. Leave it as it is. Color is getting okay, fine. And this file name is, and there it is. Okay, so our code is working fine, but we are getting one error. So let me copy that error again. Uh, Copy. Now let's see what it says. So it says access to this at emp from origin has been blocked by CORS policy. So no access control allow origin header is present on the requested resource. So basically what happened, browser when try to request this one, it says that your server is not allowing us to access your resource because uh, it's a CORS policy. It's a web security thing which actually restricting your request to go further. So you have to configure your server so it should allow at least this localhost 8080 localhost 4200 port number. So to fix that, what we have to do, we have to go back and stop our server. Okay, this server we have to stop, terminate all, and at the top where your endpoint is, my endpoint emp is present inside employee controller, rest controller. So just after that, you can write one annotation. Its name is cross origins, and here you have to mention what's your origin, from where the request is coming, the origin request, and that you can mention that right now my API would be called from http colon slash slash localhost colon 4200. So here we are mentioning that I am expecting some request which will come from this port and this IP. So right now everything is on local, that's why it is in localhost. If in future if someone deploys this code, so it will have a domain name or different IP, so you can also mention IPs, but it should say that what's the origin, from where requests are coming, so server won't block that request. So we're just allowing us. Okay, fine. So let's run this application again. Run on application. Sorry, Java application. Run as Java applications. Okay, server started. Let's verify whether our application, the API is running or not. Oops. Requested. Yep, it's working. So no effect on at least the endpoint if we call it directly. Now let's try to call this from our application. So let's clear the console and hit the request again, and see something is coming up. You can see response from API. Yep. If you expand, I can see records are coming up on console. I can verify that's the same record we saw on this tab. There it is. So Rahul, Raj, Kiran, all these are present here. Rahul, Raj, Kiran. So you can see we are able to execute our API and able to call the endpoints from front end. Okay, that's great. At least we are somewhere integrated end to end. We call this end to end call. Front end to back end is happening. Nice. Okay, but we are not getting anything on web page. Yep, that's the whole point. We want something to be printed on web page. That's the thing. So what we will do on this TS, which is printing the console, I mean output on the console, I'll create one variable. Let's say employees. I'll say it would be of any type. Any I'm giving it. Okay. Now once it's done, So what I have to do, I have to initialize this variable inside of this line. So I'll say emps equals, and the response is coming up, it should go here. So what we just did, whatever data or response coming from backend, it should get assigned to emps. Okay, nice. So we just initiate one variable. Now TypeScript file is task is done. Or let me just give a minute. I have to complete that image first. This way. Yeah, I need this endpoint. Yes, so to fix that, what we did, we have added this cross origin at backend level. And this is our API. We are calling this API. And when we execute it from web page, that's how it looks. That's a web request. Let's see. Oops. Okay. From browser. Okay. And when we call this from API, the console says here. Let me show you again. As soon as I load this page, here we go. We have the data. So I can take this screenshot from console of browser. So this is end-to-end integration happened after adding this part. Okay, now we are enhancing it. Idea is at least show some data on web page here right away. Okay, so we are doing that. So first step is get that data outside of this constructor. So we just initialize this variable. It's done. Now let's go back to its component. I mean the STL file here. Okay, I'm not going to show everything, but I'll give you idea how you can fetch every detail from the code. So we will simply, let's say I want to print just the name of the user or the employee. So I'll say h1 tag, say employee name list. Okay, this is the thing it's saying, employee name list. So how to create list? UL tag. Here I'll create list, but I'm not sure how many users are there or employees are there. It could be one or it could be 1000. So to make sure that it should get wrap up decently, I'll use a loop, ng for loop. So equals, then let the e of emps, that's my variable name, and inside here I'll just print the name. So e dot name. Why I'm calling e dot name? Because in response I can see it has name here, name, and that's the record. See, now I can print the employees record right on the screen. There it is. So to get the name, what we did on our component, we first of all fetch that record. Take this code, can, okay, this is the first thing. Get the variable out from the class name is app component is employee component is. Once it's done, on HTML page we wrote a ultra simple thing. If you have practice, you can clearly see what's happening. Otherwise it will take time. Why and how this loop is working, how it is printing the data. And when works out. The name is right here on web page. So likewise, you can print this whole data in a tabular structure and then print every single fields coming from the backend. ID, name, email, age, whatever data is coming up. So you can put everything on a what do you call that, tablet or table tag and print every single data. Like we have a structure in MySQL Workbench, similar way you can show it. So at the UI part, you can do that. Okay, so this is get request, and that's how we trigger API to call the things.